Hello. So we are starting our first at-home notes. We are starting chapter one. So what you should have in front of you is a blank copy of your notes. So what you see on my screen right here, which you should have gotten from me. If you do not have it, if you lost it or forgot it, there's always a copy available online. Also, if you have a tablet that you can write on and you were doing that during quarantine and you liked that system, you can always download that PDF and use the PDF to write your notes that way. Just make sure then that I have a way to be able to see that when you come into class the next time I see you. All right, so this first chapter encompasses a lot of different ideas and a lot of different concepts. And so if you want to know kind of what this chapter is, what it all covers and where we're going with all of these ideas, please make sure to go to Schoology and look at the outline of what's going on in this chapter. And so it'll just be like a really quick outline of what's going on with each lesson and with each subset of the lesson. It's really hard to summarize this, hence why this first chapter has a really, really weird name, but it's kind of just all of this small stuff that you've probably seen in the past. The idea is that you've learned it already. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to quiz you on it right away, but the idea is that you should already know these things. And so I'm going to go a little bit quicker through these things, but since it's recorded, you're welcome to go back and rewatch this as many times as you like. So let's go ahead and get started. We're first starting with significant figures. I have no idea if you've seen this before, but significant figures are a different way of rounding. So we've talked about rounding to decimal places, and it's just a different way of choosing how to round. On your IB exam, when in doubt, we want to round to 3 significant figures. I don't know if Mr. Coelty has ever talked to you about that, but when in doubt, you need to round to 3 significant figures. So what does that mean to be a significant figure? So we have these rules right here in front of us of what is a significant figure. A significant figure is all non-zero digits in a number. So we could do 12.562, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant figures. 6.61 is 3 significant figures. Okay. Zeros bounded by non-zero digits. So all of these are non-zero digits. When you start to put zeros in, they can count as a significant figure as long as they're surrounded on either side by non-zero digits. For instance, 2,301 is 4 significant figures. Even though there's a 0, it's surrounded on either side by non-zeros, and so therefore it is a significant figure. If you have 0.30052, this 0 is not bounded on either side, so it does not count as a significant figure. However, these 2 zeros are surrounded on either side by non-zero digits, and so they do count as significant figures. So we don't count this one, but we do count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 significant figures. 8.036, this 0 counts as a significant figure, so this is 4 significant figures. Okay, zeros to the right of a whole number or to the left of a number in a decimal expansion less than 1 are not significant. Very weird way to say like 2,300. These 2 zeros, since they're not bounded, they do not count. So this only has 2 significant figures. 0.0056 also only has 2 significant figures. All of these zeros don't count until you start with non-zero digits. 4,560 has 3 significant figures. All right, last one. Zeros to the right of a number in a decimal point are significant. As we are assuming that it's rounded, it's giving us a hint of what happened during the rounding process. So for instance, 30.0 is actually 3 significant figures. By putting that 0 there, you're telling me that it was probably something like 29.9999, and it rounded up to 30. And so putting that 30.0 is saying it was really, really close. They're all significant in this case because it's telling us that it was actually really close to that number. So this is actually a pretty precise number. It just happened to round to something that looks maybe less precise. 40.00560. All three of these zeros count as significant figures because they're bounded on either side by non-zero digits, and this zero at the end also counts as a significant figure because it's after in a decimal expansion. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 significant figures. Okay. We're going to take this number and we're going to round it or write it correct to all of these different ways that we could round. It's either telling us to round to a certain spot, either decimal or no, or to a certain number of significant figures. When we are rounding to the nearest integer, that means the nearest whole number. So we look at 207.634. This is the number we want to round it to. So we look at the number after it to tell us what's going on. It's a 6, which means it's rounding up. So that means that that 6 tells this 7 to now become an 8. And that's to the nearest integer. To the nearest 100, notice that there is no th at the end. Whereas this has th at the end, that's talking about a decimal place. This is actually talking about, if we maybe like turn our notes, this point, here, let's start here. This spot right here is your tenths place. Notice that th. This is your hundredths place. This is your thousandths place, right? Notice though that when it says to the 100, that means that this is our ones place, our tens, no th place, our hundreds place is right here. This one would be your thousands place. So when there's no th, it actually means to a number that's not a decimal. So to the nearest 100, if we were to write out 207, to the nearest 100 is this place right here. We want to round to this spot. We still always look to the number after it to tell us whether we're rounding up or down. In this case, it's telling us to round down. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of then taking that 2 and turning it into 1. No. All we have to do is make it stay at 2. We're rounding down because instead of being 207, we're now 200, which is less than 207. So that's to the nearest 100. To 2 decimal places, 207.634. Here is your second decimal place. We look to the number after it. It's telling us to round down. Again, that means instead of 34, it's going to become 30. We're not turning it into a 2. It's just staying at the 3. All right, 3 significant figures. 2 is a significant figure. 0 is a significant figure because it's surrounded on either side. And 7 is a significant figure. So we've now gotten up to 3 significant figures. We count starting from the left. 1, 2, we are at our third significant figure, so we stop there and look at the number after it. That number tells us to round up, so that will be 208, and that is 3 significant figures. To the nearest tenth, 207.63, your 10th spot is there. Looking at the number afterwards, it tells us to round down, which really just means to keep it at the 6. To the nearest 10, there is no th, so what that means is that we are rounding to the tens spot. So that's the number that we're rounding to. We look at the number afterwards to tell us how we are going to round. So it rounds up to a 1, and there we go. Okay, let's practice this. A rectangular wall of length 8.11 and a height of 3.82 is to be painted. A can of paint costs that much and can cover an area of 5 meters squared. We want to calculate the area of the wall first by estimation and then by using a calculator. So our estimation first. Estimation is a great way to just double check an idea of something before you move on, right? So if your length was originally 8.11, round that to a number that's easier to handle, which is 8. If your width was originally 3.82, round that to a number that's easier to handle, an integer, right? So that's going to round up to 4, because that 8 is telling us to round up, whereas this 1 is telling us to round down. Which means using those numbers, our area, which is length times width, is going to be 8 times 4, which is 32. So that's our estimation. Then our actual calculation, we are going to take 8.11 times 3.82, and we're going to use our calculator to solve for this, and we get 30.9802. It tells us to round to 2 decimal places. So we go to the second decimal place, look at the number afterwards. 0 is telling us to round down, which really means just to stay the same. So we've got 30.98. And we were talking about meters. This is area. It's 2-dimensional. So that means it's going to be squared.